Live from their home studios, please welcome the hosts of DevCentral Connects, John Wagnon and Boo Lamb.
Well, hello there, DevCentral. I'm John, and this is DevCentral Connects, and we are excited to be with all of you today. We have an awesome show planned for you. We're going to be talking about the TLS report, the 2021 TLS report that came out from F5 Labs recently. And we have got an amazing security expert from the Labs team to join us and talk all about things TLS, which is just going to be amazing. So we're streaming like we always do to YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter and all the places. So we want to interact with you. So if you've got some questions or comments, then please drop them in the chat. And hey, we'll probably highlight one if we've got some good ones there. So feel free to do that. But before we get started, I wanted to had a quick interesting conversation with a buddy of mine a few days ago, and he just bought a new Tesla. So everyone knows about the Tesla, cars. And there was an interesting phenomenon that he said. He was like, hey, some of these new Teslas coming off the line now that are being bought do not have that new car smell to them. I was like, well, that's weird. What do they have? Whatever. He said there's more of an Elon Musk. So with that, let me bring in my good buddy, Boo Lamb. And I tried that a little bit last week, Boo, and I thought maybe I'll give it another shot. So a little dad joke to start things off.
Yeah, I just had to take the palm off my face there for that one. But that one was good. I am a Tesla owner. My car did smell new when I got it, but maybe it is developing some of that Elon Musk right now.
It's a pungent smell, it stings the nostrils, right? Kind of a thing. Good to go. Yeah. Well, hey, so Boo, I got a question for you, man. We're talking about TLS today. We're talking about all things, security and all that stuff. And it kind of made me wonder, what was your first computer that you owned? And if you remember, how much either memory did it have, or like hard drive space, or how fast was the processor on it? And if you don't remember it, that's fine. But I was just thinking about, things like older technology and all that kind of stuff. Do you remember anything about yours?
Oh, that's such a great question, because I had just gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole of looking at restoring a Commodore 64, which was not my first computer, but I was always jealous of my friends that did have Commodore 64s. I remember playing games with them on it, and I was like, I wish I could have one of these. Always asked my parents. They were never interested in getting me one at that point.
Yeah.
And then after that, I had a friend with a Tandy 1000, who I don't even know if that's like a brand that was everywhere, but played with one of those. My first computer was actually a 386 SX, 25 megahertz, I believe. And I think the RAM on it at that time, was 4 or 8 megabytes at that time. The hard drive, I believe, was 80 megabytes. Actually, I might be wrong on the megabytes for the RAM. I got to go back and look that up. But I remember getting a 180. Yeah, I think I upgraded the hard drive to 180 megabytes, and I believe that was about $400 to do at that time.
Wow. Yeah. And you're probably thinking, man, that's 180 million bytes. That's a lot of bytes, right? So
I'll never use all of this.
No, we'll never.
Meanwhile, we got TVs that suck that down in about 30 seconds.
Oh my goodness.
Not even.
Isn't it crazy how the world changes? I mean, in this field, there's always something new, So it's awesome. Hey, a couple of people I wanted to shout out to is first of all, Alex, my good friend out there. He gave a smiley face and then he said bad. I think he's talking about my joke with Elon Musk. And Alex, when you say bad, I interpret that as good. That's good feedback. So thank you, my friend, right? Awesome. And then Pasilva, he had a PC Junior. This is not even the full PC, I guess, right? 128K. Wow. So 128,000, in memory. And then Reed, man, he's the TI 99. I remember the old TI like calculators where I thought in high school, I was like, man, this is like super awesome,
Yeah,
so
you can make Snake on
crazy.
Those ones.
Yeah. And then Daniel Wolf.
Yeah.
Oh,
there we go.
There we are. So Daniel Wolf, 286, 20 meg hard drive, 2 megabytes of RAM. That's awesome, man. And then Daniel goes on. Of course, it was beige. I mean, what a color. what other color would a computer be, right? I don't even know.
I had the IBM PS2, I think was the series.
Was it? That's
we didn't
crazy.
get to hear what yours was, John.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I got mine a little bit later than like the Commodore 64 and all that, but mine was a PC. It was a 450 megahertz processor, which was just cutting edge. I remember a buddy of mine, he had this flight simulator game that was on a CD disc, and he brought it over and he was like, "This is amazing. It's like I'm in the cockpit. There's like no jitter, whatever." And it had an 8 gigabyte RAM, or not, I'm sorry, 8 gigabyte hard drive. And I don't even remember how much RAM it had in it. But I mean, I was just like 8 gig. I mean, that's 8 billion or whatever, bytes of RAM, of hard drive space. So I'm just like, this thing is a monster. So now it's like you get a little bitty thumb drive and like an SD card and, no big deal. Right. So
totally.
Crazy.
Yeah, we got to do a
though.
show on. I would love to. I'm gonna put this out there. I would love to see. I don't know if anybody was into BBSs back in the day. I'm sure some of the folks here, if they're network operators at this point, they were probably into BBSs back in the day. But I loved playing Lord, and you would dial in and you would do your turns on Lord or however they divvied up the actions for the day, and if you could, and I've seen web versions of it, I would love to see somebody, let's say they had a huge community that had people that were into BBSs, if they put some sort of Easter egg on their website that had the game Lord on there for community members to play. I don't know. If anybody wants to comment on that and agree with me, that'd be great.
Let's make that happen. Let's make that happen, people. That's awesome. Hey, so just to say hi to a few other people, and then we'll get our distinguished guest on here to talk about TLS stuff. But Angel, that's crazy. You guys are getting old. I guess we're showing our age with the computers we had, and then the man himself, Jason Rom. Look at that, man. I mean, he's so just like I would expect Jason, every detail of every spec. Oh, he had the old 5 1/4 floppy, man. Those were actually floppy.
Yes.
So. Good stuff. And then, Leslie, the TI-83 calculator. Everyone had the TI-83. I love that. So that's awesome, man. And then Pytel, it's good to see you out there, our friend. Uncle asked you, what computer can I buy that will last for 10 years? Oof. Yeah, well, I don't know how fast you want it to be, whatever. So, and then Rodolfo, I want to give a shout out to him as well, man. The ZX81 with 1 kilobyte. Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, super cool. Well, good to go, man. It's fun to kind of hit the nostalgic tone every now and then and think back, right? So, well, hey, so today we have got an awesome guest, David Warburton from F5 Labs, to talk about the TLS report that they did a ton of research. They looked at a lot of different websites out there and different applications, and they found some amazing trends. So with that, let's bring on Mr. David Warburton. David Warburton, it's good to see you, my friend. Welcome to DevCentral Connects.
Hi guys, how you doing? I was going to ask if we had any viewers left after that Tesla joke, but I guess you've had some. There's at least 4 or 5 people still watching.
David, I like to think that we have more viewers after the bad dad joke. Right? We gained a few. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, hey, so David, I know you guys have done a ton of work there, F5 Labs team, with the TLS report this year. The 2021 TLS report just came out, and so I want to give you a chance to kind of let the viewers know, like, what is this report? Maybe how often you release it, and what's it all about? So, if you don't mind, maybe give us a quick little overview.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So I'm the lead researcher and an author for the report. We tend to put it out roughly once every 2 years. Things change in the world of TLS and encryption, but not so often we feel like it's one of those reports that needs to come out every quarter. So it's about every 2 years. Generally, what we do is we scan about 1 million websites. So we use various lists to try and evaluate the world's most popular 1 million websites. And then we developed a tool a couple of years ago now, or about 1.5 years ago. Then we use that tool to go and scan those sites, and we kind of bring back loads of data, everything to do with the TLS handshake, the certificates, like encryption-related headers that the app might be using. We look at DNS records and all sorts of stuff to try and build up a picture. in terms of like, how is a web dealing with encryption these days? How is it being deployed? You know, people adopting new protocols? Are they turning off the old ones? How are people, you know, what kinds of certificates are people using? And it's useful. I think people like to compare, you know, how they relate to their peers, you know, how up to date are their settings. But we also like to look at like, what are the things that go wrong? So one of the things we've done more in this report than we have in the past is look at how encryption can go wrong, some of the new vulnerabilities that have been announced over the past year, and some of the ways that we can try and identify threat actors and malicious servers maybe hiding in those top 1 million websites.
Fascinating. So, David, one question I'm interested in is anyone still using the old, TI-82 or the old Commodore 64? No, I'm just kidding. Computer.
You know, you were asking those questions, and I thought, I wonder if those machines could actually process, like have the computational power to actually do a TLS handshake. I mean,
could they shake?
Could literally take a minute or two to do the crypto for those.
Yeah, I like to think in the era of COVID and pandemic, maybe they'll do like a TLS, elbow bump instead of a full handshake. So, maybe it's a lesser
that's
version.
For next year's report, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's the next one. Awesome. Well, good to go, man. Well, hey, so I know that there was like some key findings that you guys had. So I was going to see if we could maybe go over a few of those, and then we'll kind of dive deep into some of those. Is that cool, David?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep. Good deal. Yep. And I think, did you have a quick little graphic here? You want me to pull that up?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So I've got a couple of things we can share if it kind of makes it useful.
We'll pull that up. Yeah, good deal.
So again, we scan 1 million sites now for various reasons, everything from sort of temporary DNS resolution issues to some sites still not supporting TLS handshakes. Actually, I think it was around about 15% of sites in the top 1 million still don't support TLS at all.
They don't. They're just HTTP.
Just straight HTTP up. Only, no option to even try and go secure. And some of those that did support TLS but failed, and a very small percentage, just had broken configuration. So the client, the scanner we've got, and the server couldn't negotiate a cipher, or maybe the protocol was too old, or there was some other problem. But we do this scan about once a quarter, and we tend to kind of average the results out. And we find that pretty much every time we run these scans, we're always getting about 750,000 sites come back and give us, usable records and usable kind of data. So good news is that the majority of the web's now supporting TLS 1.3. So that protocol is obviously the newest version of SSL/TLS. It went to the most popular, I think it just breached the kind of 50% mark in May of this year. So now the majority of servers are now going to talk, TLS 1.3 if they can. But to me, that's the kind of interesting thing, because I think the one thing that we tried to highlight in this report is it's not just how quickly web servers and sites can go and adopt a new protocol. How quickly can a web server go and deploy maybe like a quantum resistant cipher. Really, for me, it's more interesting, how quickly do we turn off the old stuff that we know is broken or is known vulnerabilities. And that's really interesting, because we find some quite good correlations between weak TLS configurations and those servers that also have out of date web server software, and they maybe haven't been patched in like 15 years. So there's lots of kind of insights that you can see a few more on the screen there. A few percent, so 2.6% of servers don't support a modern cipher at all. And so when I say that, I'm saying things like, the best cipher that these sites could offer with things like RC4 or triple DES, or RC2 even, ciphers that have been broken and considered weak and vulnerable for years, decades in some cases. Again, so it just paints a picture, I think, to me that, so many sites are thrown up, they're kind of thrown up, they're configured, a certificate's thrown onto the web server, and then they're left and forgotten about for years, if not decades. And clearly, we like to think that sites nearer the top of the 1 million are maybe better configured and well looked after, but certainly a million's a big number, right? So there's a lot of servers that actually just aren't touched for years at a time.
Wow.
And then so I can talk about RSA in a moment. That's interesting to me. And as I said, this tool that we've developed called Kryptonize, that's something we've kind of added, and we keep building on as often as we can. So one of the latest features we've added is something like the TLS Fingerprinting, which has been pretty cool, because it allows us to then actually kind of go out, and as we're scanning these sites, fingerprint them, as the name kind of suggests. There's lots of different types of fingerprint. Quite often in the past, particularly in the web site environment, when we talk about clients and browsers, we talk about client fingerprinting. It's a way of maybe identifying a client without using a cookie, or maybe trying to identify a malicious bot, that's maybe trying to masquerade who it really is. Well, if you can fingerprint it or perform some other kind of analysis of it, you might be able to identify it. And so we've done the opposite. We've gone and fingerprinted the top 1 million servers and got some pretty interesting results there as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, that tool, Kryptonice, that's something maybe we can even dig into deeper on another show. I'd love to learn more about that. How that all works. So it's amazing. That's amazing. Well, good stuff. Well, maybe we could dive a little bit deeper into a couple of these things, if that's okay. So you mentioned the TLS 1.3 is on the rise. I think you may have even had like a quick graphic on that, if I remember right. I don't. If you don't, that's fine. But it's interesting to me that TLS 1.3 was released, I don't know, several years ago now, and it's good to see the adoption rate. I mean, I think you said like 62% or something are using TLS 1.3, which I have to say this too. I'm glad that this report is not called the SSL report. Right?
I mean,
we finally,
honestly, somewhat crazy.
SSL.
I don't think we're ever going to get rid of SSL completely. But yeah, we had to make a stand and call it TLS.
Old habits die hard, but you guys are leading the charge. TLS report. Well, let me bring this up really quick. Maybe you could talk about the TLS 1.3 adoption rate. So I'll pop this up on the screen. Yeah,
this one's interesting, and I might nip to another slide as well afterwards. So, I mean, what we can see here is actually that although across the 1 million sites, we're looking at an average of 63% kind of adoption, that varies massively from country to country. So for the last report, I was using the TLD of a domain. So we're using a .co.uk or a .com or maybe .cn to try and finger in the air kind of guess what that server was. But this time we've actually gone and done proper geolocation lookup. So we've resolved an IP address, we've done a geolocation lookup on the IP, so we can say with pretty good kind of certainty that server, that IP address actually belongs in that country. So I think we've got much better kind of matching results per country now. And so you can see there's quite a big variation in terms of which countries are actually supporting and adopting TLS 1.3. You've got the one end of the scale, you've got the US and Canada around the kind of 78-80% mark of servers that prefer 1.3. And then right at the other end of the scale, you've got China, Brazil, and Israel between sort of 10 and 20% adoption. So it's a massive kind of variation. And you can kind of speculate as to why that might be the case. We don't have a definitive answer, but I think some obvious, maybe more political ones will kind of come to mind.
Yeah. Of course, politics is going to play a part, right? Because it always does.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, without kind of beating around the bush, China's, people are probably familiar with the Great Firewall of China and the country's kind of efforts to filter outbound internet traffic. China, Russia, I think, is another country that have kind of come out and stated they don't want to support anything. I think there was some confusion in reporting. I think some people were reporting that TLS 1.3 was banned. I think what's actually looking at being banned in China and Russia and potentially other countries are things that prevent them from identifying where you're going, right? So actually, it's not really TLS 1.3. It's more encrypted SNI or it could be encrypted DNS. Those are the things that are absolutely going to get blocked by those kind of countries. And clearly, the newer the protocols, generally the more secure they are. So it maybe kind of goes without saying that those countries that have more of a desire to kind of control outbound internet access for their citizens are probably going to be slower to adopt those newer protocols.
Yeah, I think we saw a country in Europe implement encryption interception into mobile phones, if I'm not mistaken.
Kazakhstan was possibly the one I was thinking.
I think so.
Yeah, so they tried again. That was a couple of years ago, and they tried again this year. And so what they were doing was actually, they've tried for years to get their nation's root certificates into the Google and Firefox and other sort of mainstream browsers. Because if you can get your root certificate into those root stores owned by the browsers, then you can intercept and do what you want. And so for years, those browser manufacturers thankfully have been saying, well, no, because it's almost certainly going to be used for nefarious purposes. And then what happened is, for the second time, Kazakhstan, the government via their ISPs just said, well, they basically just asked their citizens to install the certificate. For security reasons, if you don't install the certificates, then you won't be able to browse these sites for security. And so I believe a small percentage of people did, and so that was exactly that. But you would have to install the root certificate on your mobile device, on your laptop, on anything that you wanted to be able to access sites such as Google and Twitter and some other social media.
Yeah, I mean, if you threaten that with Twitter and Google, then you're going to get people to install it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, what's interesting though is how we can prevent those kind of those circumventions. I mean, the one thing is, even if you didn't install that country's root certificates, if they're trying to perform man-in-the-middle interception of TLS, they can still do it. It's just that your browser will show you a certificate error, which most people are going to click through because they want to get to their Twitters and their social medias. But if we use things like HSTS, so HTTP Strict Transport Security, it's a security header that web servers can send out to say, don't ever connect on anything other than a secure connection. Well, the added benefit of that protocol, that header, is that it prevents browsers from bypassing certificate warnings. So although, yes, you're effectively kind of blocking yourself going to those sites, you know that you've got a secure connection.
Yeah, it's very strict, as the name suggests, right? That's awesome. Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, hey, maybe another quick thing that we could talk about with this report is the adoption of elliptic curve cryptography. So, a lot of sites are using that today, and that's also been a steady adopted technology for key exchange and those kinds of things, right? So I know with like perfect forward secrecy and frankly, with TLS 1.3, I mean, perfect forward ciphers are mandated effectively. So anyway, but could you talk about elliptic curve? And I think maybe you have a chart on that I could pull up here as well.
Yeah, this isn't the best chart. This actually just kind of compares performance. I can talk about this in a second. But we're definitely seeing a good adoption, a good move to elliptic curve crypto. And there's two places that we can use it, right? There's the key exchange. There's the kind of handshake part. So the public key crypto part of TLS was many years ago pretty much exclusively RSA as a kind of key exchange mechanism. And the problem with RSA is it uses a fixed key, allows for bulk connection, bulk collection of data, and then offline decrypting. So the benefit, obviously, of elliptic curve key exchanges, which use Diffie-Hellman, are that generally, because it's a combination of very small keys in elliptic curve, and the fact they're ephemeral, so that it's a one-time key per session, means that you can perform bulk connection, but you don't have to decrypt every single session that want to kind of brute force. So elliptic curve can be used in the handshake, and we're now seeing almost exclusively almost every single server. So 99% of every single server in the top 1 million actually supports elliptic curve, Diffie-Hellman, ephemeral key exchanges, or key agreements, I should say, which is great. So that's fantastic. But then, of course, supporting them doesn't mean that they don't also support RSA, and that's one of the stats I had near the start, was actually 52% of servers still support RSA. But that elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman ephemeral key agreement is what gives you the forward secrecy. But then we've also got elliptic curve crypto being used in certificates, and we're now seeing about 25% of certs from web servers being signed by ECDSA, or the elliptic curve digital security algorithm. Which is great as well. And again, because it's smaller key sizes, it's far more, and you can see, actually the one thing I've got on the bottom table here is basically a performance comparison. So you can compare the performance of 2 and 4K RSA keys to much, much smaller ECDSA keys. And I think the interesting thing for website operators here is that you'll notice a huge difference in the speed of signing, which is when the web server has to sign something to give to the client, versus the verifying. The client has to verify that the server sent it and signed it with its private key. And so RSA is a bit backwards for website operators, because RSA is far more efficient to verify. But as a web server, you're serving hundreds of thousands of connections, possibly. The client's only got to verify it once for each session. Whereas you'll see for ECDSA, it's actually flipped. The performance is much more in favor of the servers. Plus, because they're smaller keys, they're just far more performant. So yeah, we're seeing this kind of nice shift. It's reasonably slow, but it's slow but steady, of kind of adopting elliptic curve pretty much across the board, from public key, crypto, to the actual certificates as well.
Beautiful. No, that's a great thing to know, that it's that people are adopting that.
I think the thing that's kind of ECDSA has been supported in clients for years, but I think there's this kind of natural. It's like anything, like especially technology. People are resistant to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If RSA still works, if RSA certificates are still fine, why change? So I think there's just some kind of natural inertia to kind of shifting away. But almost all modern smartphones and browsers, they all support ECDSA certificates. They all support ciphers that use Diffie-Hellman and elliptic curve. So there's really no reason for all websites to not move.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's a technology that everyone needs to head toward anyway, right? So beautiful. Well, good deal. Well, maybe one last thing. I know we're coming up a little bit on our time here, but one last thing is this is maybe a bit more negative or telling or whatever, but the encryption that's being abused now. I'd love to maybe get a little bit into that. Maybe let you talk for a second about that and how. It is interesting. You mentioned that some of the older versions of TLS, SSL, in fact, I saw SSL v3 on that big chart that you showed earlier. So, people are using that, or the old, hashing algorithms, or just things like that. So it's maybe not surprising that encryption is being abused. That's one of the new OWASP top 10s, actually, some cipher problems. Basically, that's the number 2 on the list this time. So anyway, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the abuse of encryption that you guys found.
Yeah, so we try to look at obviously the negative ways in which encryption can be used, and there's a few ways. The obvious way is that attackers are clearly using it to masquerade as genuine websites, and it's getting that much easier. We've clearly got, and not to pick on Let's Encrypt because it's a fantastic service, but we've got services like Let's Encrypt which offer you free and automated and easily kind of deployable certificates. So the problem is we've now got the majority now of phishing sites, around about 83% of phishing sites, are using genuine certificates, performing valid TLS sessions. So it's no longer possible to kind of tell our users or family members and friends to look for the padlock. The padlock doesn't mean anything from a veracity point of view. Yes, it's secure, but we don't know if it's actually genuine or not. So we've got around 83% of phishing sites using encryption. So we need another way to try and easily and quickly kind of identify malicious servers, whether it be phishing or maybe command and control servers out there. So one of the things we did this year was to implement TLS Fingerprinting into the Cryptonize tool that we've got. And so what you've got to remember is that when you configure your server, you will configure it not just with one protocol and one cipher, but with 4 or 5 different protocols, maybe from SSL 3 to TLS 1.3, and maybe with a dozen or so different ciphers. In fact, we found an average of about 20 ciphers supported for each web server over the internet. And so from a fingerprinting point of view, once you connect, if you perform this handshake with the server and you see which protocols it supports and which ciphers it supports and which extensions and options and the order in which things come back in, you can fingerprint it, which can be quite useful. It tells us a few different things. Do I have it build out on this slide? I don't think. Oh, I do. Here we go. Let me just build a site so we can see. So what we get after performing this fingerprinting is a nice little kind of hash, which actually is an amalgamation of the cipher suites and TLS versions and then some extensions. So we get this big long code, and we can use that to try and identify stuff. What was really interesting is just kind of looking at the number of unique fingerprints. In fact, I'm going to ask you guys, what of 1 million different servers, or actually about 750,000 different websites, how many unique fingerprints do you think we found in those 750,000 sites?
What do you think, Boo?
Wow, I would hope all of them, but
yeah.
What's your guess?
Well, that was my hope as well. Out of 750,000,
you could argue.
We'll say 600,000. I'll just throw a number out there.
Right? On the one hand, and the one thing that we did find is, to put you out of your misery, it's significantly less. We found about 8,000 in 1 million.
Wow.
8,000 total, but then only 4,000 were completely unique. So only 4,000 appeared once and never again, which shocked me, frankly. Like, that's a massively big difference from almost 1 million sites down to just a few thousand different fingerprints. But in fairness, if you're deploying multiple servers and they've all got the same configuration, maybe they're all defaults out the box, especially for web servers in the cloud, you would expect them to have the same fingerprints, to be fair. But yeah, the number of fingerprints was much lower than we expected. But more to the point, from a threat hunting point of view, what was really useful is that we could then use these fingerprints to try and identify servers. So we actually looked for fingerprints of known malicious servers, like command and control servers for malware, for bots and things out there. We're able to scan for those, and thankfully there weren't too many, but there were still a few thousand instances of servers out there in the top 1 million that had the same fingerprint as things like TrickBot and Cobalt Strike, two of the most prevalent malware strains that we've had over the past year. So it's been really interesting.
Yeah. So I guess now that I think about it more, a lot of people might unbox their big IP, set up a SSL profile with just string default.
Default out of the box. Yeah, exactly.
And then at that point, hopefully you can use that to, well, you guys have already done some of that to identify malware, but hopefully you can use that to identify things that don't fall in that list, and they're also not default settings out of the box or something.
Well,
and maybe you start to.
Yeah, I mean, not to put my Kryptonite sales hat on too much, but one of the things I think can be useful from a Kryptonite point of view, because we've made it very automatic, very kind of automated and API driven, so you can embed Kryptonite into, say, CI/CD pipelines or automation workflows, where you can use this fingerprint to very, very quickly and easily figure out if you've got a consistent TLS profile across maybe dozens or hundreds of different web properties across the web. So yeah, it could be used to both look for threats and risks out there on the web, but also just to fingerprint your own servers and look for maybe misconfiguration.
Yeah. It's like Googling your own name, David. What's out there.
And so what we've done is, I'm a big fan of reusing code. So this is actually reusing Salesforce engineering tool called JARM. So it does JARM TLS fingerprinting, and you can actually go to Showdown, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and you can put in a JARM TLS fingerprint that you can see there, and look for instances like you would do anything else. So you can look for people that share the same fingerprint as you, or maybe put in the fingerprint of Cobalt Strike and see what IP addresses it matches for.
Fascinating. Wow. You have whet our appetite, David Warburton. We all want to go read this report cover.
Glad to hear it.
Man, it's a page turner, everyone. I tell you. Well, hey, this has been a fascinating conversation, and David, we'll make sure we put the link to the report, in our comments and in the show, the description there for those that want to watch it or are watching this later on YouTube. You can click on that. And but David, this has been amazing. I really appreciate your time coming on here with us, kind of explaining what you guys did, how you did your research and what you found. And there's always fascinating results. So, man, I just really appreciate you being here today.
It's always great to come on the show. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you guys.
Take care, my friend. Good to see you.
See you guys.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, Boo, that was a great one, man. What a great conversation,
Awesome. It's a unique report. Like, there's so much in there that isn't anywhere else. It hasn't been done before in the industry. So it's super helpful to have this.
Yeah. And it's awesome to know that those that whole team is right here at F5 just doing amazing work. And man, we can bring them on and talk about this stuff. And it's just it's a fascinating thing. So yeah, just encourage everyone to go out there. And even if you don't want to read the whole report, you certainly could, but they do a great job of just that kind of executive summary, just key findings. And you can see some of the highlights as well. So you don't have to spend, hours or several minutes or whatever. So anyway, Boo, we've got a couple of shows coming up here next week. I just want to pop up these super quick. We've got F5 Tech that we're thankful for. So this is, I know you and Jason did a show recently on just technology that you're thankful for. That's kind of changed your world. So we're gonna have our top 5 countdown show next Tuesday at 9:30 Pacific. So everyone, make sure you tune in to that. And then a week from that, we're going to have a special episode. This is kind of that 5th Tuesday of the month, which I should note, we're not going to have a show next Thursday because it's Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. So there's no show next Thursday. But the following Tuesday, that'll be a special episode. So stay tuned. That'll be a lot of fun. And then a couple more coming up is DevCentral Connects on the 2nd of December. What does your lab look like? So it's going to be a lot of fun, just some home labs and how do people set up their labs. And then finally, I wanted to mention the At the Edge with you, Boo. So maybe you could even mention what you guys are going to talk about on that one.
Yeah, we'll have special guest Michael O'Leary on. And I think what'll be cool about this one is we want to use At the Edge to be able to get people to the point where they can deploy their applications on the edge. And if you're not there already, something like learning about Kubernetes, and I think learning the Kubernetes Certified Administrator curriculum, whether or not you write the test, is going to get you to that point, or at least be a big part of getting you to that point of deploying your applications on the edge if you're not there already with this type of technology. So Michael O'Leary has recently done the Certified Kubernetes exam, and so he'll be able to share his path to that.
That is amazing. Kubernetes is everywhere right now.
Yes.
It's all the rage. So that'll be fascinating to learn more about that. Well, Boo, as always, it has been a pleasure to do this DevCentral Connect show with you. It's always a lot of fun. And just want to say thanks to all the viewers out there. Thanks for connecting with us and chatting. You know, it's fun to kind of look back on old computers and hear the old stories. So Boo, thanks again, man. It's been a lot of fun today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, with that, we are going to show you the promo for next Tuesday, and we'll see you then.
Everyone has their aha moment with regards to their journey with F5 technologies. In this season of gratitude, the DevCentral team welcomes solutions architect Michael O'Leary to count down our favorite F5 technologies for this month's top 5. Join us Tuesday, November 23rd, 9:30 a.m. Pacific for F5 Tech We're Thankful For. I'm going old school with my choices. Jump on the live stream and let us know yours. Hope to see you Tuesday morning.